Hello YouTube. Today I wanted to tell you really quick about my efforts to try and mount a one of these Chinese USB handbrakes onto the GT Omega Titan Racing Cockpit. So what I've done is they sell an add-on that goes here on the shifter where this shifter plate would normally be, a larger shifter plate for the TSS shifter. Or handbrake. So it's meant to be mounted with the plate horizontal like this. But I just ordered one because I knew I wanted to try to rig up a handbrake and was trying to figure out exactly how I was going to do it. And as a goof, I just kind of stuck it in the hole there. Now you can see there where I marked it with Sharpie because I'm going to take the whole thing apart. And then put a couple screws through it to secure it, because it's on there and you could use it, but I mean it'd be fine. You probably wouldn't even notice when you're playing a racing game, but I mean obviously I wouldn't. But if you, I mean you could ignore it if you really wanted to, but it's janky. So the next plan is to figure out a way to make it a little bit more permanent. So that's what I'm going to be putting the screw holes in there for. But yeah, I've marked it off so I can put it all back together the way it was. But really it's just the shifter plate stuck in the hole right there where the T is for the shifter. Now, they do sell, I mean, this you can mount a handbrake to, but this can't be mounted horizontally, at least the way I want it, like an American car, like an emergency brake. So this plate wouldn't do you any good up here, and plus if you have it there, then you don't have a place to put a shifter. So that was my solution. So you'll see here, this just pulls right out, and then there's the shifter plate. You can see my mark. That'll come off with a little rubbing alcohol, so I can get that off of there if I want to. But yeah, so on to the next step. Okay, so we have it all pulled out. Basically, it's what they call mild steel. Which means that you can drill it with regular drill bits as opposed to hardened steel. I pulled it out of the seat because it sort of rattles around like this, and I wanted to make sure that it was nice and square as possible when I went to put the holes through. So I figured it'd be better. I'm not going to do it like this, but I figured it'd be better to lay it out flat on my workbench, and also that I don't risk getting like metal shavings in my carpet. That wouldn't be fun. So these are 40 millimeter M8 bolts, and they are long enough to go through. So, and my plan is to, it would be nice to be able to put it through this way, or to put one through this way and one through that way, but because of the base of the seat, it actually tapers outward. So I think it would be hard to get a nut back there straight on to put the screw through, or the bolt through. I don't think there'd be enough clearance. So I'm probably just going to have to put them both straight down through here, which should be fine. But yeah, so that's what's next. I don't think my tripod's down here, so I don't think it can actually record me drilling the holes, but we'll see. So I decided to go ahead and bring it outside to do the drilling to avoid metal bits in the house, and then I'll just sweep up out here. But you can see here, maybe not the most centered holes in the world, but they look good next to each other. And I put the first, after I did the first hole, I used this to kind of hold it up. I put the bolt through, and then I used this to kind of square it up, and then did the other hole and put the other bolt through and made sure it fit. And then what you're going to want to do is make sure that you pull each piece out and dump all the metal shards and shit in your trash so that you're not having stuff fall out when you're putting it back together. Give it a good knock. Okay, so we're back with our metal works. You can see here I've got it put together, and I painted the bolts with good old Rust-Oleum appliance epoxy, which is amazing. Blacken anything that needs blackening. A couple things I wanted to mention. Just randomly, I bought these 1-inch pipe cap plugs, and you can put these anywhere. This one actually has one on the end, but you can't see it because it's in there. Yeah, so I thought it might help it ride more squarely in here because it's kind of got like an edge on it that sticks out on one side. So long story on that one, but I put one over here on this so that when someone's climbing into the seat, they don't have any chance of like scratching their leg on the on where this is, because depending on where you position it, it can be pretty obstructive when you're getting in on the right side. So I went ahead and put that on there. But so I thought I'd mention that. You can stick those anywhere that you have a hole that isn't going to be occupied by anything. Also, I bought these springs for the shifter. I don't know if or for the handbrake. I don't know if I'm actually going to use them, but just keep in mind that the tighter the spring you use, the more flex you're going to put on this plate. And granted, it is very heavy, but it will flex a little bit if you pull on it enough. So we'll look at that in a little bit once I get it back together. Also wanted to mention that there's another video with someone who used a handbrake mount for the art cockpit. And attached that right here. And it has an upright. But again, it's the same issue as this. If you were to put it in the shifter hole, is that the handbrake that I have, if you want to have it horizontal like an emergency brake, it's not. You can't mount it that way. Another thing I wanted to mention is this is the clamp that comes with it. The way I originally had it attached was I had the clamp on here, and then when you pull on the the shifter mounts here, and it was still horizontal, but it was a lot shorter. So I had the idea of taking the 2 shifter bolts and putting them there, and then I figured at that point I can just get rid of the clamp altogether because it's actually thinner steel than the mounting plate for the actual handbrake, and this actually has more flex to it if you put a heavier spring on it. And the handbrake itself doesn't flex at all, so I just figured I'd eliminate that from the equation entirely, and then just put the 2 bolts in here, and then I can position it wherever I want and have it as high as the shifter basically. So that's where we're at now, and then next we just have to put it back on the seat. Oh, I also wanted to mention that once those 2 screws are in there, this has no flex in it whatsoever. I'm trying to wiggle it around and make it make noise like it did before. Any noise you hear is whacking up against my workbench. But yeah, so once that's all attached, it's going to be totally on there. And the bolts aren't even on there that tight. I actually want to be able to take it apart because when I'm not using it, the shifter and the handbrake plates are going to come off, so I can roll it in back here into my laundry room with my other Player 2 racing setup, my Daytona shifter. So, but when they're not hooked up, then both of these will be folded up back here somewhere. I also wanted to mention that I used some little half-round files that I have, I think they're called pin files, to remove any sharp burrs from the drill hole, because you don't want to cut yourself or have any loose shavings in there. So that's definitely something to look out for when you're dealing with metal. So as we're putting it back together, this is where our Sharpie marks come into play. Now, it just so happens that in my case, apparently I had it pulled all the way back. So I probably didn't really need the Sharpie marker there, but I didn't realize at the time. So, yeah, because if I slide this out a little bit, of course that doesn't want to go. If I slide this out a little bit, boop, that's where the marker is. So, yeah. But in the other places, it'll come in handy. You can also see where I put a cap here on the bottom of the shifter. And then that way, if it goes really far down to the floor or close enough to drag the carpet, it won't catch. So I'll go ahead and slide this in here. Hopefully. There we go. Lovely. So then, once again, there's our Sharpie mark. So then that's where I'll hold it and tighten it, but can't do that while I'm holding the phone, so. Okay, so here it is with everything attached. Now, I noticed once I got the screws back in and everything fixed in place that there was a little bit more play in this than I wanted, because it was kind of turning a little bit inward and upward because of the extra space that's in there. So what I did was I took two of these extra washers that they give you with the Titan Cockpit, these big ones, and I stuck one in that crack right there. Now notice it won't go in there now because there's already one in there. And then I stuck one in that space right there. And that completely firmed it up, like it's moving the whole seat. It's not, that thing is not going anywhere. So, and then if I go to take it off, I can just pull the two washers out and then stick them back in when I put it back together. But yeah, that is rock solid. Also, for this plate, I'm a little paranoid about how much it sticks out. Now, because of the angle of the seat, I don't think I would ever get close enough to it to smack myself on it. But just in case, I went ahead and bought a little roll of reflective tape. And I'm just going to put a couple pieces on here just so I can see it out of the corner of my eye. And I don't get... So you know how it is when you add something, that isn't usually there, and you're like, oh, I'm going to move that thing later. And then you get to the point where you get used to it being there, and then you end up tripping over it because you're not looking out for it anymore. That certainly happens to me. So I figured I'd go ahead and put a little bit of bright green stuff on here so I kind of see it when I'm walking past it, just in case. But I think it should be fine. And then the next step is just to mount the handbrake. So we've got the handbrake on there just loosely, because I just wanted to mention that one of the convenient things about mounting it this way is that you've got all this lateral movement to put it exactly where you want it. And in my case, I'm probably going to center it with the gear shift, or put it pretty close to center with it. But yeah, just got to tighten it down and hook it up. Alright, so we got it bolted down, and so there's a little bit of flex since it's just hanging off of two screws, but I think that is more than acceptable, especially considering it was in the laundry room before and I couldn't use it at all. But yeah, I think that's going to be just fine. And this, it looks like this sticks up, but I've played with it before, just, when it was in there loosely before. And when you're in the driving position, there's no way to bump into that thing. Even though it comes up like that, yeah, it's totally fine. So you have to your arm just doesn't bend that way. So in case you're wondering where my crazy handbrake handle came from, it is a hand grip from a rascal scooter, like a mobility scooter for old folks. And what makes it neat is that's hard-ass plastic. So what you have to kind of do is just jam it down on there, and it only goes about maybe 2/3 of the way down. You know, it's supposed to be all the way down here, but the plastic is so hard, it just won't go. I tried like hitting it with a heat gun and everything. But what's great about that is it is, like I said, it's hard. So what it does is it extends your handle. Like you can see where it gets lumpy. See the lumpy part? That's where the actual metal is. And then the rest of this is just empty. But it's so solid. I probably should put another spring in there. Probably shouldn't be able to do that. But but yeah, it's so solid it gives you that much more handle, which especially if you're going to mount it all weird like I did, you need all the handle you can get. And also it's rounded. It's completely round, so it's not like you're grabbing that flat, uncomfortable piece of metal with just a little piece of crappy foam around it like it was before. So I'll put the link to these in the description from Amazon. I think it was like $5 or something. But just thought I'd mention that because I'm sure someone's going to see this and ask in the comments. So I figured I'd go ahead and save you some time. So plugging this thing in is what the kids would call fiddly AF. So I would suggest putting the USB cable in before you mount it. So otherwise you're going to have to climb underneath of it like I am here. So after looking at it for a while, I decided that the best place to zip tie the cable in place would be right here. And then this way, if you look, you can see the cable doesn't come into contact with anything. It's not moving. Nothing's moving it. So that seems like the best way to keep it out of the way. And then I zip tied it one more down here, just so it's running straight down. And then I pulled up a little bit of slack here so it's not too tight on it. And then I can run it from there to my computer.